Road, Peterborough. Call 01733 709 306 to order for delivery. The Lounge. Friendly service with a great atmosphere.
Do you own a restaurant or takeaway? Cater Fair is an expert supplier of new and used commercial catering equipment. Visit caterfair.co.uk for quality equipment on sale at the lowest prices. Or call us on 01733 310 115.
Assalamu alaikum. This is your very own Dr. Shabina Asad Qayyum for your very own Body Health and Mind show on Peterborough's Muslim community radio station Salaam Radio 106.2 FM and Inspire FM in Luton 105.1 FM. It's an absolute delight and pleasure to have you on the show and to talk to all of you after the very quiet, I would say, time that all of us have been having at home. I hope you've enjoyed your time where you have been off with your loved ones during the Christmas period and during the New Year. And I wish all of you a very happy New Year indeed. And to our non-Muslim listeners, I wish you a very happy Christmas and a happy New Year. And I hope that you took advantage of the time. It's been a very busy week back at work. As you know, I am Dr. Shabina Asad Qayyum. I work as a local GP within the Peterborough area. And it's always a pleasure to bring these weekly shows on board to you within the capacity of a presenter. As like all of my other presenters, we are all volunteers here. We work fi sabilillah for the betterment of the community to try and build bridges with the community. And what a wonderful job everybody is doing about it. So I am going to be hosting yet another wonderful show. I thought it's going to be the first show of 2018 and it needs to be a very appropriate show indeed. So we needed to have a really buzzing topic to try and bring to the fore. And this week I have a very, very special guest indeed. And if you'd like to take part, it would be wonderful to have your participation by texting and WhatsApping us any questions that you have on 0774527 8978, or you can call us on our studio telephone number. For those of you who are outside Peterborough, please use the Peterborough code of 01733 602 133. And you can also question us on Facebook Live on the Salaam Radio page. Please try your best to like the Salaam Radio page. Like I said, we all work very hard. Now, like I said, we're going to be having an absolutely wonderful show today with a very special, esteemed and very, very well knowledgeable guest. And I'd like to introduce you all to Mr. Mehboob Mirza, who is a consultant general and breast surgeon. Now, we use the title Mr. for all specialists who are surgeons and titles of Miss for all females who are surgeons within the United Kingdom. And Mr. Mirza gained and completed his basic surgical training in Cambridge after qualifying from Dow Medical University in Pakistan. He gained his fellowship from the Royal Colleges of England and Edinburgh and completed higher surgical training in the region with specialist training in breast surgery. During his stay at the Good Hope Hospital, he completed his Masters in Medical Sciences from Keele University. He is currently the RCS Surgical Tutor for the Trust, which is the Royal College of Surgeons Surgical Tutor for his Trust, and he's also an examiner of the Royal College of Surgeons of England. He has been in a substantive consultant post both at Sandwell, West Birmingham NHS Trust, with sessions both at Sandwell and City Hospitals in Birmingham. SWBH Breast Unit is one of the largest screening units that provides screening mammography and assessment to women in Birmingham. And Mr. Mirza's practice involves management of benign and malignant diseases of the breast, and he's also got a specialist interest in screening uptake in BME groups. He's the Secretary General for Muslim Doctors and Dentists Association in the UK and involved in local interfaith work. And as you can obviously assume, we are talking about breast cancer. Assalamu alaikum, Mr. Mirza.
Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much.
Happy New Year to you.
A happy New Year to you. Thank you ever so much for your time. You know, it's been such an opportunity to have someone like yourself, mashallah, on the show who we can gain a lot from in the way of knowledge. And we wish you a happy New Year and thank you so much for your time over here, Mr. Mirza. So What I wanted to ask you really is, for the purpose of our listeners today, we're talking a little bit about breast cancer. Now, I usually like to ask my listeners, or ask my guest, in other words, what motivated you to become a surgeon within this particular field, which we know is very important when it comes to conditions like cancer, Mr. Mirza?
Thank you very much. And as I said, Happy New Year to you and to your listeners as well. We know that breast cancer is very common in UK and all over the world. When I started my surgical career, I wasn't sure what I was going to do, in fact. But through the training, I understood and encountered many challenges through the surgical training. And I thought this is something that I could do very well would be breast cancer work, which is a very common disease in UK. And there's a lot that needs to be offered.
Yeah.
And therefore, I picked up this. And as the career progressed, I got to specialist training to do breast cancer surgery.
Wonderful. And for the purpose of our listeners, Mr. Mirza, obviously it's something that is cancer and treatment of cancers, especially from a secondary care perspective and a primary care perspective where we are, there is always a great deal of stress and importance that is laid on diagnosis and treatment and obviously cure rates. Would you like to tell our listeners, please, a little bit about what breast cancer actually is and how one actually can contract it?
Well, breast cancer starts when cells within the breast begin to divide and grow in an abnormal way. And it is caused by a combination of lots of different factors, which we relate as environmental factors and patient-related factors, but many of which are beyond our control. And breast cancer, as we say, is not a single disease, a spectrum of disease where it can go into different stages and grow at different rates.
Okay.
We know that breast cancer is very common, as I alluded earlier on, and 1 in 8 women in UK can be affected. So 1 in 8 we are talking about. And you'll be astonished to know that about over 62,000 cases every year are diagnosed each year in UK.
Wow, 62,000, that's
Yes,
amazing.
and this has increased from about 45, 50,000 to more now, because we are diagnosing much more breast cancer now. So, as I said, the lifetime risk of getting breast cancer in women is 1 in 8.
Right.
But it does mean that, around 87% of women do not get breast cancer. So there is, obviously, it may seem alarming to people that 1 in 8 women can get breast cancer, but not everybody will get cancers, God forbid.
Sure. And I think it's really important to look at the statistics. I mean, 1 in 8 women will get breast cancer is very staggering. What do you know specifically where that places us with our European counterparts or internationally in terms of United Kingdom? Is that a lot higher, you would say, than the rest of Europe?
It is all over the globe, really. In the developing world, breast cancer risks are almost similar. In some places, be 1 in 9, 1 in 10. We are actually one of the highest, perhaps, in the developing world.
Right. Okay. So that is there a reason behind that, Mr. Mirza? Is it just coincidence? Is it just because of risk factors or genetic makeup?
As I said to you, that we don't know the actual cause of cancer as such, but we do understand that cancer can occur from a mixture of several different environmental factors.
Right. Okay.
There's no single cause or a cause that we are able to pinpoint.
Right. Okay. And would you like to tell our listeners who are listening to us right now what particular risk factors can actually increase your risk of developing breast cancer? What risk factors put you in a position to make you more at risk of developing breast cancer, please?
Thank you. Well, the main risk is actually being female, really.
Okay.
But that is a risk that you cannot overcome. There are many women in the world, obviously. But cancers do occur. Breast cancers can occur in men, but that's a very, very small percentage of men.
Sure.
So mainly it's a disease of women. So gender is obviously very important, as I said. And cancer will occur in a slightly older age group, which is much more commoner. And then we come across to significant family history. And these are three things that are very important that we can relate to that people will develop breast cancer. But as I said, it's an overall lifetime risk of developing breast cancer is 1 in 8. So that is, but as the age progresses, the cancer risk will increase as well.
Right. Okay.
So if you are much younger age, the chances of developing breast cancer is very low. So if I quote you a figure that if someone is up to 30 years of age, the risk of getting breast cancer is about 1 in almost 2,000 really.
Okay.
Women. But as you grow older, the risk, including up to 69 or 70, could go up to 1 in 13. But overall, as I said, we put everything together, it will be a lifetime risk of 1 in 8.
Right, a lifetime risk of 1 in 8. It still is quite significant, actually, as I see it.
Yes,
Now, other risk factors, obviously, you've spoken about the fact that being female is the biggest risk factor. And other things, like I've spoken in the past about having certain risk factors that are particular to cancer in general. And as you probably agree, smoking, obesity, alcohol intake, etc. Are there any particular risk factors associated with breast cancer that aren't associated with any other cancers, for example, say estrogen stimulation, etc., or hormone use?
Well, there are instances where we say that estrogen or progesterone long-term use, which we are talking about, HRT use and other things, can be attributed to it. But, there is no one link to it. Obviously, female hormones do come into play. Having late menopause and usage of HRT would actually influence some degree, but not all cancers are caused by these things. Obesity is also a factor which is a risk factor in relation to breast cancer, but not every obese person will get breast cancer. So you can say that there are risks are higher if you're obese. The risks are higher if you drink alcohol. The risks are higher if you smoke. But if you've got a healthy lifestyle, the risks are perhaps low. But then you will come across somebody who does everything right, does not smoke, is not overweight, and doesn't smoke, but still have been diagnosed with breast cancer. So yes, there are factors influencing it, but not everything is related together.
Okay, yes, that's fine. And because a lot of people, and this is the other area that hopefully we will be speaking about later on in the show, but we've noticed that I do get a lot of questions, especially within primary care, when people come to me to state when they are, for example, want to go onto the oral contraceptive pill and the estrogen content of that associated with risk factors in relation to breast cancer. But the actual use of HRT would pose a slight risk to breast cancer, especially more so if initiated in later ages. Is that correct? As opposed
That's right. Yes, the cancer risk is higher in a combined HRT pill. When I say combined, it means that estrogen and progesterone combined pill.
Yeah.
But the actual risk increases with the duration of usage. So if you had used over up to 5 years or so, then the risks are low. But if the usage is for up to 10 years or more or 15 years, then the risk becomes a little higher. There was a Million Women study some time ago that showed that the cancer risk was slightly higher in patients who take HRT with a very long-term duration, I must stress, because there are benefits of HRT as well in women.
Sure.
And you should not be denying women to increase the risk slightly when they have a lot of symptoms attributed to menopause.
Okay, yes, because some of them can be quite detrimental as well in terms
That's
of...
right, and it's can be lifestyle changes and other things, and that would affect their job and life as well, really.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. And there I absolutely agree with you. So I do think that in terms of the insight that you've given to a lot of our listeners, one important take-home message from this is obviously to be aware of increased risk factors. And the other thing that I think that would be very important, I think, for our listeners to take on board or be aware of is, how is there a genetic connection with breast cancer as well? It's got a hereditary tendency. Am I correct in saying that?
Well, not all breast cancers are heredity related, and you will be surprised to know that about 5% or just above 5% breast cancer are heredity related, which means that there is an inherent link between developing breast cancer. So someone could be on high risk and developing breast cancer if they have got certain genes. Perhaps we'll talk about a little bit more detail later on. But the actual percentage of breast cancer related to heredity factors are very small. And as I said, of overall 5% of breast cancer would be heredity related.
Right, okay, which is actually quite reassuring, because I always used to think a lot of stress is obviously placed upon the fact nowadays in terms of trying to increase diagnosis rates of things like genetic screening, etc. And a lot of people, because these investigations are very freely available, especially in the private sector, tend to think that if a first-degree relative, female relative, for example, has cancer, they've got a very high percentage of getting it. And in fact, before the show, I have a question that actually asks about this regard. So 5% isn't too bad, I would say, isn't it?
It's not too bad, but people who have a heredity link, they are at a very high risk of developing breast cancer. So if I tell you that somebody who's got the BRCA, which is the gene of breast cancer gene, if they are positive for breast cancer gene, then they have about 50 to 85% risk of developing breast cancer in their lifetime.
Oh my goodness!
So that's a huge risk. Therefore, then prophylactic surgery and all the other factors will come into play. But for heredity related cancer, the risk can be very high.
Yes, and going back, Mr. Mirza, to the BRCA gene, which is something that quite a lot of people are aware of. We've seen some famous personalities in the world that have tested positive for it and have undergone protective, or what we would call protective mastectomies, as a result of having the positive BRCA gene being tested. Does everyone with a first-degree relative who have breast cancer, especially if it's BRCA gene positive, need to go for BRCA gene testing or genetic screening?
Yes, that's a very good question. More and more research is being done at the moment, and we are getting more and more new genes that are developing and being investigated. But essentially, in all hospitals where there is a breast unit, there will be a family history breast cancer clinics as well, where patients who have first-degree relatives could be referred for assessment and given them some advice regarding their risk assessment. We now have in Birmingham, we now have a genetics unit in Birmingham at the university, where we send all our patients who have a high risk. They are then risk assessed by the genetics team, and they're referred back either for surveillance, which means that you look after them with early mammograms or other investigations, or if they are very high risk, they are discussed for surgery and prophylactic surgery and other things. So if you've got one first-degree relative, you don't have to worry so much. Suppose, God forbid, anybody's mom had breast cancer at age 70. And the daughter develops breast cancer at 40. That is not although they are first degree, but the risks are not so high. But if the mother had developed breast cancer at age 40 or earlier, then the transmission of gene or heredity passage would be much stronger, and would then recommend that they should be seen and dealt with by the clinical genetics unit. And also patients who have a special type of breast cancer we now know, which is called triple negative. When I say triple negative, we are saying that there are three things that are important in breast cancer. There are three types of receptors: the estrogen receptor, the progesterone receptor, and the HER2 receptor.
Okay.
And if these are negative, it means that the chances of heredity breast cancer are slightly higher, and therefore these patients who are diagnosed, then siblings would need to be investigated as well.
Right.
And also, if you had breast cancer, which is bilateral, which means that on both sides at a younger age, the chances are that there is something wrong with the gene.
Right. Okay.
So by just having one close relative doesn't mean that you will definitely get breast cancer, but it has to be the genetic makeup and also the positivity of the BRCA gene.
Okay, well, that's very, very useful information, especially the triple negative that I wasn't too familiar with, and I think that you've clarified it quite a lot. And if you've just joined us, on the Body, Health and Mind Show with Dr. Shabina Asad Qayyum from Salaam Radio 106.2 FM and Inspire FM in Luton on 105.1 FM. Give us a call, text and WhatsApp on 07745278978 or the studio telephone number, Peterborough code 01733 602133. We've got some encouraging comments that have come in. We have a Nazreen B who has said wonderful show, and also a Dr. Ishfaq Ahmed who says brilliant show. So thank you very much for your comments. Thank you very much for participating and taking an interest in this very important topic. And Mr. Mirza, going back a little bit, because I know that your introduction obviously was a little bit about breast screening and the interest that you take in it. Could you talk to our listeners a little bit about breast screening and what it entails, and why does it take place at age 50? I know you've said that the risk of cancer increases in later ages, isn't it?
That's right. You see, the breast screening program in this country and all over the world, and I think United Kingdom was one of the pioneers of starting a breast screening program. And as I said earlier, that the breast cancer incidence occurs more in a slightly higher age group, or over 50, you'd have more chances of developing breast cancer.
Sure.
So the screening program was started initially, and patients who are healthy, and I must stress that the screening program would target healthy people who are women of age 50 to 70 years of age who are registered with the GP and automatically get an invite for breast screening program every 3 years.
Right.
The program has now been increased from 47 to 73, which is started in 2016, and so we now are going to screen patients who are 47 onwards to up to age 73.
I see.
So the problem with any screening program is that you cannot offer a screening program to the whole population.
Correct.
You have to offer the program to the most high-risk group.
Right.
Because otherwise the program will fail completely. So if you can imagine that if you offer breast screening program to before 40 years of age or so, then there will be so many of people that would be at having mammograms and other things. But then again, mammography in younger age group is not so good because the yield from the imaging is not good. So the diagnosis would be difficult in this age group. So 47 onwards or 50 onwards has been the age group that we do breast screening. So these are all healthy women sitting at home, get an invite through the GP to attend breast screening. And that's where they should come and attend for breast screening, and they will have an assessment where they will undergo 2 views through the mammogram. One is an oblique view, one is a craniocaudal view. These are just too technical, but there are 2 views. The actual examination would last up to 15-20 minutes, not more than that. About 2 weeks later, you will receive a letter. Patients will receive a letter saying that the mammograms were normal, so there will be no further action taken until 3 years. Some people will be recalled back because they may have found something early or different, or a lump or a shadow. And they will be called back to have a biopsy done, and then from there onwards we will then find out whether the biopsy is positive for cancer or is it benign, And then if it's cancer, then we'll treat it. If it's benign, we'll discharge the patient.
Okay. Well, that's wonderful, and it's given us quite a lot of insight into what is entailed with breast screening, because I believe that the American counterparts, they start screening. I think that's more for high risk if they have a first-degree relative from the age of 40, isn't it? But then again, the system of healthcare there is very different too, isn't it?
Yes, it's privatized, and there are things that will be taken into account as well. Because there are now some new modalities of investigations are coming, which is MRI or magnetic resonance imaging for breast, and that may be something that in future that can be used as a tool as well. But these are still in the early stages. But what we have actually discussed earlier on with cancer screening and things, what we need to know also, that there are certain signs and symptoms of breast cancer. The screening population is some people who are asymptomatic, which means that they have no symptoms at all. They are healthy women sitting at home and getting an invite for breast screening. But there are people who are not in that age group. They should be presenting to us. So there is a other route, which is a symptomatic route, where patients will notice, or the general practitioner like you will notice some changes in the breast, and you would then refer the patient to our specialist clinics, where we will see them and diagnose them and biopsy them and obviously give them the results.
Okay.
So this is very important for women to actually self-examination and make sure that they understand what they're feeling, because not all breast cancer will become a lump, or not all breast cancer will present as a lump.
That's true.
So there are other signs of breast cancer which are very subtle sometimes. A minor indrawing of the skin, or a discharge from the nipple. All these things can be very important.
So, Mr. Mirza, we're coming up to a break. We will join this again just after the break, and stay tuned in.
Thank you.
Stay tuned to Salaam Radio after this short ad break.
The Truly Scrumptious Group presents the East Meets West Wedding Show, a free event on Sunday the 14th of January, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Holiday Inn Peterborough West, Peterborough, PE3 6SG. Come along with your friends and family for free goodie bags, free magazines, musicians, a huge bridal wear collection, and up to 60 exhibitors. It's a great way to start 2018. Pre-register at truly-scrumptious-weddings.co.uk. East Meets West Wedding Show, Sunday the 14th of January, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m, Holiday Inn, Peterborough West.
Feel like some great tasting chicken tonight? Great meal deals, wraps, burgers and sides. We've got it all at Chicken Palace. Call and collect at 302 Lincoln Road on 01733 702 447 or 8 Park Road on 01733 343750. Chicken Palace, open 11 a.m. till late.
Do you have lots of clutter at home or in the office that needs to be kept but nowhere to keep it? Ivet Self-Storage offers a secure, affordable, clean and dry home for your belongings. We have security systems in place which are monitored 24 hours a day, ensuring that your items are safe. With a simple monthly payment, Ivet Self-Storage provides secure and tailored facilities to meet your specific requirements, whether short or long term. We offer the best prices and longest opening hours in Peterborough. For more information, please call on 01733 306 456 or visit us at Ivet Way, Westwood.
Do you like the idea of being a radio presenter? Have you got a great idea for a show? Why not get in touch with us? We are always looking for enthusiastic, committed and professional individuals to join our team of volunteer presenters. Send us an email to info@salamradio.co.uk and we'll be in touch. You could be on air sooner than you think.
I've just come out of Penny Appeal's Orphan Kind Orphans Accommodation. Brothers and sisters, they've got a kitchen where they're getting fresh food cooked and served to them. They've got foster mothers looking after them. These are how orphans should be looked after. Sponsor an orphan for pennies a day. Call 03000 11 11 11 or visit the website pennyappeal.org. Remember, small change, big difference.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أد الأمانة إلى من ائتمنك ولا تخن من خانك. That you should fulfill the trust of the one who entrusts you and do not betray the one who betrays you.
When we wake up in the morning, we say, الحمد لله الذي أحيانا بعدما أماتنا وإليه النشور. الحمد لله الذي أحيانا بعدما أماتنا وإليه النشور. الحمد لله الذي أحيانا بعدما أماتنا وإليه النشور.
Thank you, Allah, for blessing us with life, blessing us with Islam, blessing us with Iman. Thank you, Allah, for blessing us with life, blessing us with Islam.
This is Salaam Radio, Peterborough's Muslim community radio, broadcasting on 106.2 FM and online.
Assalamu alaikum, welcome back again. We were having a wonderful conversation with our very esteemed guest, Mr. Mehboob Mirza, the consultant general surgeon and breast surgeon in Birmingham. And we would like you to join the show. Text and WhatsApp us on 07745278978 or call us in the studio telephone number 01733 602 133. We are already getting a lot of wonderful input. We have a Mr. Faisal Sikandar Dehraj that Texas is watching. So we have people viewing us all the way from the United States, which is very heartening to see. And please keep up the good work, and it's a great show. Thank you very much, Jazakallah khair, for all of you for watching and supporting the show. And Mr. Mirza, thank you very much for staying online and being patient with us. And you were talking very much about what we were continuing from beforehand, weren't you? We were talking a little bit about breast screening.
Yes, that's right, Shabina. Before the break, I was trying to just stress the point that women should be looking for any signs and symptoms of breast problems. And these can be very subtle. Therefore, it is important to understand what they should be feeling for. And they should be aware how to examine, which they can find out from leaflets from your GP or practice nurse, and to be aware of what they are actually looking for, and any changes that occur or different than their normal appearance, they should be then reporting that back to you or the practice nurse. And not all lumps are cancers in the breast, and also not all cancers present as a lump. So as I said, the screening program actually deals with very small cancers which have even not become cancers, and they can be at a very early stage. And when somebody is examining, they need to know the skin texture. Is there any dimpling that they have noticed? If there's a orange peel-like appearance in the breast, if there's any redness, if there's any discharge coming through, or if there's any lump that they've noticed, or sudden change in the shape or size of the breast. So these are some symptoms that a patient can report, and this is very important to stress the need of self-examination in women, especially from ethnic minority background.
Yes, that's right. Because we don't, I think the problem faced as well, because you have a specialist interest in screening with BME minority groups. And a lot of the time, and for my listeners as well, I'd really like to stress that it's important. And I second what Mr. Mirza has said about looking for the very subtle signs that he has just described, for looking, it's not just a lump that can be suggestive of breast cancer, but the other signs that you've just spoken about. And with regards to ethnic minority as well, Mr. Mirza, what was the message that you had for those minorities, which you take an interest in?
Well, absolutely. It is very important for women not to ignore the letter that comes through. It's about screening. It's about their own health. They should look after their health.
Okay.
And as we know, there are several programs of screening going on into the country. The reason is that we want to detect anything that can be treated very early.
Yes, that's
When I
absolutely right. Yeah.
say early disease, we are talking about when the breast cancer hasn't really become breast cancer. And we haven't touched upon it, but I would briefly explain that there are certainly two types of breast cancer. One is the invasive cancer, which is the one that divides and then can spread to other parts into the lymph nodes and other parts of the body.
Yeah.
And there is a non-invasive one, which we call as DCIS, which is ductal carcinoma in situ. And this variety of breast cancer is very subtle and only appears as some flecks of calcium within the mammogram. You can't feel it. You can't examine the breast to notice any changes. There will be no changes in this. And if we pick up that early breast cancer, which is the real reason for breast screening, then we can treat it early with, very smaller, type of surgery. And the outcomes are really very good. Cure rates are very high. So before it actually becomes an invasive cancer, we like to treat it. So we are trying to catch the cancer before it actually becomes a lump. That's the message for the breast screening population. Now, as I said, many people will ignore the fact that the letter has come because there are certain myths associated with breast cancer as well.
Yeah, tell us about the myths, because we need to get that message out there, don't we? That's what your hard work is all about.
That's right. I mean, not particularly with the ethnic minority group. I would suggest that there are certain myths that all over the around the population, that an injury to the breast can cause breast cancer, or breast cancer always runs in family, or deodorants will cause breast cancer, or men can never have breast cancer, or stress causes breast cancer. These are myths really, and they are untrue. But the basic message is that if you have found something which is different, you need to report to your GP, and the GP will refer you through the symptomatic route, which I have explained, going through the clinic, and the other route is screening route. Now, there are certain myths I would suggest the barriers which are in breast screening in ethnic minority. There are certain health and cultural beliefs in people from minority background, which you may have heard that having a biopsy will spread the cancer type thing, or mammogram will cause some other disease, or as I said earlier, they ignore the letter. And then there are certain other barriers, in terms of language. They are unable to understand what is being told, what is being asked. Many of the literature is in English, but now you would see that most of the letters are now in their own languages as well. And I will come back to this particular one in a bit, really. And also ignoring their health, which is, I feel personally that, many women from ethnic minority, actually, when they grow older, they actually don't look after their health. Simple things like, exercise and going out and eating healthy. And they just don't feel that they need to go to the doctor or have any screening test because they feel okay. And as I said, cancer will not become cancer until it becomes, a lump which you can feel. So if it's growing inside, you may not know for many years. You may not know for 2-3 years until it becomes and spreads somewhere. So the key is to get it and diagnose it and treat it early. So there's a lot of things that come across, and in our ethnic minority groups, and in certain black minority groups.
I'm so sorry to have to interrupt you, Mr. Mirza. I think that we have a call. I'm just going to take the call and see who it is, if that's okay. Just get the caller to... Let's go. Hello, Assalamu alaikum. You're live on Salaam Radio. This is Dr. Shabina Siddiqui with Mr. Mirza.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Fahad Matin from Luton.
Assalamu alaikum, brother.
This program is also broadcasting in Luton via Inspire FM. So I just like to highlight a few things which has been highlighted earlier regarding the breast screening. Luton and Dunstable Hospital give breast screening for any woman or man from the age of 47 plus.
Sure.
And the recall system in Luton has been done on a 3-yearly basis.
Okay.
Plus, the system in Luton is that there are more female consultants and nurses there to satisfy the needs of the Asian population, which is around, because this is something which has been allowed quite commonly in Luton.
Right.
And last but not least, the service can be activated from GPs.
Yeah.
They can also patients can also go to through 111 services as well. So if patients think that they have right symptoms, they can get themselves referred through the 111 services or the walk-in services.
That's wonderful. Sorry, brother, what was your name, please?
Fahad Matin.
Fahad Matin.
Fahad Matin.
Matin. Okay, Brother Fahad Matin, thank you so much for that suggestion. And Mr. Mirza, obviously, Brother Fahad has just explained to us about some services that have been put in place or implemented in Luton. Indeed, this must be quite complementary to screening uptake in BME populations, isn't it?
No, that's very encouraging. And what your caller suggested, it is open for breast screening, and the recall is good, and 3-yearly. This is a national program, and they must be doing something right to have a greater uptake in the BME groups, and that is very important, because we know that the area that Luton Dunstable serves as a very large BME population.
Yeah.
That is very important. And in one of the screening literature that was highlighted some time ago, that the breast screening uptake in white population is up to 70% or above 70%.
Right.
But in minority groups is much less.
Yes.
And we make sure that goes up to a certain level, really.
Yeah.
We are not screening people, then we are not diagnosing, and we are not then treating them either.
Yes, that's right. So, Brother Fahad Matin, thank you very much for your input with that. That was wonderful. Luton has some programs in place and some structures in place that we can all take examples of, and it's wonderful to try. This is why we impart knowledge, you see. I mean, we have the expertise of Mr. Mirza, and then we can obviously look at areas around us, which is why it's so wonderful to have these shows. So thank you very much for your call indeed. Jazakallah khair. May Allah reward you for this. And Mr.
I just wanted to put a point forward, really.
Of course.
That is very important for the healthcare professionals as well, and GPs like you.
Please go ahead.
A literature survey that was done in some time ago in 2005 with barriers to effective uptake of breast screening in Black and minority ethnic groups suggested that there is a need to provide community-based education to increase the uptake of screening services among these groups, and especially education to the GPs and the healthcare professionals in different cultural beliefs and customs, and the language needs and the racial awareness. And to develop those communication skills that are important to help with these groups.
Absolutely.
So this is something that would be quite far-reaching, really.
Absolutely. And I think that it's been wonderful in terms of this show educationally as well, and how you have taken an interest, obviously, in screening in BME groups, because as a GP, we can take this, implement it within primary care. And in some cases, because a lot of the screening takes place within the hospital, to have a conversation and just beginning to have that conversation to address our BME population is what these shows are all about. So, Mr. Mirza, really, it's been wonderful.
I'll just touch you something very important here. That, as you mentioned, that screening happens in hospitals. It doesn't really. You would have seen very large vans put across, Tesco or Asda car parks and other easily accessible places where there's car park available.
Yeah.
And women are invited to these places, which is very near to where they live.
Right.
So there is no excuse that, look, my hospital is about 6 miles or 10 miles apart, far from me, and I can't go there. These screening program vans will be very closely to the patient population which they are targeting. So that is quite important for patients to realize that when the invite comes, they need to look at the address, and it must be very close to them, and they should go in and have their screening mammogram there.
Yeah, well, wonderful. And if you're listening, listeners, obviously, for those of you from Luton and also from Peterborough, the myths associated, the take-home message today is about the myths associated with screening that you feel are associated with it. Obviously, Mr. Mirza has dispelled those myths now. Please, if you've had the letter, don't ignore those letters. Please go for your screening, as Mr. Mirza has said, that there are facilities that are open, that are more easily accessible to you via your GP surgery or wherever it is that you can get that screening. Parking is available there. There is no excuse not to have your mammography done, especially if you're in a high risk group as well. So please do remember that this is a real significant disease. It's a horrible disease that can have devastating consequences. So the increase of screening means increase in uptake of diagnosis as well. And Mr. Mirza, we've got some questions here that I'd like to put to your attention, please, from some of our listeners. There's a lady called Jane, actually, from Peterborough. I've had a mastectomy and I'm suffering from awful swelling in my arm. I've been referred to a nurse. Is there anything I can do at home to help my symptoms? I think Jane's probably referring to lymphedema that takes place after mastectomy, isn't it?
That's correct. That's correct. We don't know exactly whether she just had mastectomy or whether she had a mastectomy with a procedure under her armpit, which is either axillary surgery of some nature, really, which we don't know. But yes, you probably are right. If the arm is swelling, it is very likely to be lymphedema. There are lymphedema services, and the local breast care nurses would be able to help her.
Okay.
To signpost her where to go.
Yeah.
That would require some exercises or some compression hosiery be put on, and that should be help with doing those things, really. And they would have given her some exercises too. That's very important to do.
Yeah, because I think the other thing is that some women can also present with lumps in the armpit, isn't it? Yes. That could also be a very non-subtle sign of breast cancer.
That's right, yes. There is a small percentage of breast cancer that we may not find a lump or any abnormality in the breast, and they would present with a lump in the armpit, and that lump, when it's biopsied or diagnosed, may have breast cancer cells. And we call it as occult primary, which means that the primary cause for the cancer is hidden somewhere, and therefore that will have a slightly different tailored treatment according to that, really. But yes, you are right. Some people may present with just a lump under their armpit.
Okay. Well,
but it would mean assessing the whole of the breast and also the armpit as well.
Of course. Thank you very much for that. I have another question over here that it's from Asifa from Luton, actually. I've never breastfed. Does that increase my risk of cancer?
Well, not really. I don't know how old is Asifa really, but if you look at the literature which is available quite easily online and other places, they would say that if you breastfeed, this is less likely that you would develop breast cancer. But it's not a rule. Many women who have not breastfed will not have any problem. Many women who have breastfed will can get cancers at later stage. So it's not an absolute that if you haven't breastfed, you may get something like that. But generally breastfeeding is encouraged by NHS and by general practitioners as well. I suppose you probably advise your patients or not patients, but women to actually breastfeed, really.
Yes, yes. So it is something that we obviously encourage, but unfortunately, because of some reason or the other, when they can't commence it, then we just look towards the general well-being of the baby and the mother. And in the meantime, we have a comment here from a Mr. Ansar Ali from Peterborough, who's actually a very famous personality in Peterborough as well. Is Mr. Councillor Ansar Ali. MashaAllah, fantastic program, as always, extremely informative. So we're getting some really good responses, which is so encouraging. And I can't tell you, listeners, how pleased and how heartened I am to see that a lot of you are taking such an avid interest in this show. I think it's very important to sometimes knock down the barriers that are associated with speaking about topics that can be actually considered as personal topics and private issues, because unless we speak about it, we won't know how to address the problem, isn't it, Mr. Mirza?
Absolutely, Shabina. And as I was explaining earlier, I mean, some of the barriers, especially within our Asian or minority ethnic groups, are like cultural beliefs, religious beliefs. They need to be broken down, and obviously female GPs, female healthcare professionals be able to do that quite easily, really. So there is a greater need of having awareness, especially in the GP population, and also in the healthcare professionals as well, who deal with this sort of things.
Absolutely.
We understood some time ago that the language was also a barrier in many cases, and as I mentioned, that many of our women do not speak English, but they speak their own languages, which is Urdu, Punjabi, or Gujarati, or any other, really. But the problem with many women in the same group was that they could not actually read Urdu or Punjabi.
Right.
So if you had to send a letter in Punjabi or Urdu, that actually made no sense. We in Birmingham, in our city hospital, through our health promotion and health awareness screening campaign, we developed a pictorial guide, which was like a small pictures showing where to go, really. So that there is a van which will be standing to the picture of a van, what you're doing. So that was very helpful, and that has increased the uptake slightly in a smaller group of patients, really.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very good idea, actually, because in the practice that I work, about 95% of the population are from BME minorities. And you've given me an idea, Mr. Mirza, and the idea that I have is that I'd really actually like to do an audit of how many women have missed their breast screening, perhaps do a talk in the practice for them as well to try and help increase that.
Yes, I think you should be able to get that data. You may want to phone the screening officer, get a contact with them. They would know who has not attended. These are non-attenders. And there may be some of your patients who have not attended.
Yes, that's right. I do think
ignoring the letter, which I again cannot stress anymore, that we are talking about cancers which are millimeter in size. So if I say to somebody that we have diagnosed you with breast cancer after a screening mammogram, which is about 5 millimeter or less, and it will be treated with a lumpectomy, and that's it, and you will receive some radiotherapy to the breast, and that would be it. And that in itself is a very high cure rate.
Yes.
If you leave that, they would go metastasize and become invasive cancers, and
it's a lot of suffering then takes place after that as well, which needlessly, if the screening had taken place at the right time. I have another question here. It's probably going to be the last question of this show before I bid my thanks to you, Mr. Mirza. I have a Sharmeen here who says, how good is oil of evening primrose for cyclical mastalgia? Is there any benefit?
Now, this is again something that was quite popular in about 80s, 70s, 80s, evening primrose oil. There is some benefit, but the NHS had stopped looking at it as a remedy. The problem with evening primrose oil is it's the capsule that would affect better, rather than just using the oil as a topical or by rubbing it.
Sure.
Primrose oil tablets can modulate the hormonal sequence, but that time takes a lot of duration. So we are talking about, say, 4 to 6 months of regular therapy, and that may help, improve the mastalgia. But because we know that the mastalgia can then on its own get better within 2-3 months' time, some people would attribute by taking primrose oil. It's a additional health benefit, I would say.
Yeah.
It's something as many people would use other methods to improve their health. It is fine to use it. If you get benefit, that is good. If you don't, then don't blame the evening primrose oil.
That's correct. Because the reason why I asked that question as well from our sister is that I've had a bit of scrutiny over the last few days that the fact that we don't promote any natural treatments. And as you know, being a specialist
natural treatment, I would suggest to you is physical activity, remaining healthy, eating healthy.
Yes.
That sort of thing that should be doing.
Absolutely.
Just taking supplements will not benefit.
Absolutely, 100%. And having said that, Mr. Mirza, it's been such a fantastic show. I can't tell you. I would, hopefully, inshallah, in the future, like to take some of your time again to educate us. And it's been wonderful having you. Do you have a last message for any of the listeners listening in Peterborough, Luton and UK-wide, indeed internationally today?
Well, again, the same message. If you get a screening letter, do attend if you are in the screening age group. If you're not in the screening age group, do self-examination. Make sure that you know what is right and what is wrong for you. If you develop any signs, go and report to your GP. See them early. We have a 2-week wait now. As you probably know, we see all patients within 2 weeks of the referral. So that is very good. And we would be able to diagnose and one thing is reassuring that we see so many patients, but not every patient has breast cancer.
That's right.
So most of the patients are fine and they are benign changes and they are discharged home back to the GPs.
Thank you very, very much, Mr. Mirza, for your expertise and your time. It's been a wonderful show, inshallah, and hopefully, inshallah, down the road we will have you on as an esteemed guest again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. So that was Mr. Mirza, very esteemed and very, very knowledgeable about breast cancer. Now, it's been a wonderful show. Join me again next week as ever. Before I go, I've had a message from a Mr. Munawar Khan. Please pray for the Isal Swab of my father who passed away in Pakistan. We will pray for him and remember him in our prayers. And all of you, don't forget to look after your health. Please have your flu jab if you already haven't had it and keep out of the cold. Plenty of vitamin C. Your very own Dr. Shbina Asad Qayyum for the Body, Health and Mind Show. Assalamu alaikum.
Your number one for local, national and